As you know, French President Emmanuel Macron has said that he wants to piss off the unvaccinated. The word actually used is emmerder, which does mean to piss off, but it's much stronger than that. It's got the word merde in, which is shit. Basically, it means to pour shit on the unjabbed. And he goes further than that. He says he considers anybody who is not willing to take the jab to be not a citizen. And he goes further again than that. He says he wants to harass them jusqu'au bout, to the end. And what that means precisely, we don't know, but it is very, very sinister. The video I'm about to make is about rights and responsibilities. And it applies not just to Emmanuel Macron, but also to all the other heads of state and their minions, like, for example, Dominic Raab, who is currently responsible in England for writing the new human rights legislation, which is going to be apparently all about citizens' rights balanced by their responsibilities. And if you can't see that the loosening of the restrictions is temporary when I say that, then I can't help you, I'm afraid. Now, I'm not really set up to film myself talking inside the house. So what I've done is I've taken a film we took during the first lockdown when we were allowed out for 1 hour a day at a 1 kilometre circumference from the house. I hope you find the video calming. At 4:25, I think it's 4:25, but I'll put the exact point in the description below. Something quite funny happens in the film. I do expect the video will be taken down because I'm telling the truth, but that will just prompt me to transfer the channel or at least replicate it on other platforms, which I haven't got round to doing yet. The inspiration for the video came when I went to a local cafe and ordered 2 cafés allongés to take away. When I went into the cafe, there was a large television screen there with ticker tape, and I could see that it was Emmanuel Macron talking about the fact that citizens have rights, or droits, but they also have responsibilities, or devoirs. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to analyse the rights and responsibilities first of citizens and then of the government. As far as I can see, your right as a citizen is to enjoy all the services you pay for. That's the swimming pool, the library, the cafes. You do pay for them now because they've been subsidised by the government during this so-called crisis. The hospitals. But the unjabbed will not enjoy any of the services they pay for. They'll still have to pay, but they won't even be able to go to the hospital unless they agree to being nasally raped. The duty as a citizen, well, the duty is quite clear. It's to take the state injectable. And it is to take a state injectable which is still in its experimental phase, for which there is no long-term safety data. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take it, you're not a citizen. Your duty as a citizen is to take a state injectable which will reprogram every cell in your body to behave differently. In other words, to make spike protein. Macron believes himself to be superior to God. God has made, if you're religious, you're going to believe that God has made our immune systems, and Macron says that his scientists can do better. So all of your cells will be reprogrammed, and once they're reprogrammed, you won't be able to get your immune system back into the natural state that it was in before you took the jab. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take the jab, you're not a citizen. Your duty as a citizen is to take a state injectable which has already caused thousands of deaths and millions of life-changing serious injuries. I'm not going to call them adverse events because I think it downplays the seriousness of them. I have seen many really serious videos on platforms other than YouTube, of course, which show people who, I think the worst injury is the one where their body is in convulsions and they cannot control the movement of their bodies, which are convulsing repeatedly. And I really think that is such a horrific injury that death would be preferable, frankly. And yet, Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take the state injectable, you're not a citizen. If you have any of these injuries, then society as a whole, the greater good as it were, will abandon you completely. Let's take first of all Big Pharma. Big Pharma has complete indemnity, no responsibility for any of the injections, so you can't have recourse to them if you're injured. If you've got life insurance, you should know that it will not pay up in the case of what it regards as an experimental jab. I read about a very wealthy Frenchman who had a large amount of life insurance to cover his wealth, and when he died following the jab, the insurance company refused to pay up on the basis that he had chosen to take the jab. Government won't pay up either. I think it was Scott Morrison who said, well, we didn't make you take the injection. You knew all about it and you decided to take it. It was your decision. You have to decide what goes into your body and what doesn't. I don't know how they have the nerve to say that when they're forcing people to have the jab in order to keep their job and feed their family. So who pays if you are seriously injured and you need care for the rest of your life? Well, you do, of course. It's your responsibility. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take it, you're not a citizen. And I want to mention here something which I hear nobody talking about, but I think it's absolutely outrageous. You've got three databases, basically. You've got VAERS, which stands for Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System in America. You've got the Yellow Card system in the UK. You've got the European database for Europe. And apparently, these databases only hold 1% of the actual deaths and adverse injuries. For example, the comedian Heather McDonald, apparently she was making fun of the unjabbed, and ironically, she collapsed on stage immediately after making fun of them. But the doctors said, that had nothing to do with her having just been jabbed. Nurses, I've heard many of them saying that doctors actually don't know that these databases exist. And so injuries and deaths are being completely dismissed. There are no autopsies if they argue whether the death was the result of the jab or not. They don't hold autopsies to check. So they're being completely irresponsible. To be absolutely precise, I should say that if relatives insist on autopsies, they are sometimes carried out, but they are not carried out as a matter of course, and generally the medical community wants to dismiss any adverse event. So we have a completely new medical intervention here, and yet there is no robust system for registering injuries and deaths. We just don't know how many there have been. And the only way we'll ever be able to find out is by looking at all-cause mortality. I think it's absolutely outrageous. You're on your own, my friends, if you take the jab and something bad happens. And yet, Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take the jab, you're not a citizen. Turning now to the government, what are their rights? Well, the first right is they can order you to take the state injectable, even though it is potentially dangerous. Secondly, they have the right to say it's safe and effective. Now, it's been proved not to be effective. That's why they're having to introduce the third and fourth boosters. And the databases already show, and I've just explained that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg on these databases. They're already showing that it's not safe. And yet, Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take it, you're not a citizen. The government is allowed, there's another right they have, to have conflicts of interest which benefit them at the expense of injured citizens. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take the jab, you're not a citizen. The government has the right to refuse the jab for themselves. They don't have to take it. Apparently, the National Assembly and Senate are exempt. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take it, you're not a citizen. The government has the right to exempt citizens who are useful to them. And I'm talking here about the police. I believe the police do not have to take the jab. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take it, you're not a citizen. The government has the right to violate the Nuremberg Code, which was set up precisely to prevent this sort of thing from happening, this sort of tyranny. And the Nuremberg Code says that you cannot be forced to take a jab, especially an experimental one, and that you cannot be coerced to do so. And they do go into some detail as to what represents coercion. And of course, telling people that they can't have a job unless they have the jab. That is coercion, my friends. And so is curtailing travel, because the globalists have set things up so that families are sometimes divided in different countries, but unless they take the jab, they can't see their family. This is terrible, and it is coercion. But Emmanuel Macron says if you refuse to take the jab, you're not a citizen. What are the responsibilities of government? Well, I couldn't think of any, actually. So I'm going to say nil, nothing, zilch. They don't have any responsibilities. And I want you to realise, as I do, that this is not over yet, that they are loosening the restrictions for the moment. But the very fact that in England they are introducing human rights legislation, which is going to be all about rights and responsibilities, indicates to me really clearly that they are intending to do something really, really bad, really, really evil. So look out for words like greater good, rights, responsibilities, looking after your fellow citizens, community. All these words are signals for communitarianism, which is another word for tyranny. We're looking at, as Orwell put it, a boot stamping on the human face forever.